I'm Eric Green, partner at Green and Sklar's, a boutique tax law firm and founder of the tax resolution training organization, Tax Rep LLC. Welcome to another edition of Tax Rep Network podcast. I want to thank our sponsors, Tax Help Software and Call ENQ. We've only taken podcast sponsors of products that we actually use at Green and Sklar's. Call ENQ is what allows us to call the government and get into the IRS in under 3 minutes. Tax Help Software is what we use to pull transcripts. It's our intelligent ordering where we track what's going on with our clients overnight. So in the morning, we know of anything that's happened on the IRS side, and also what we use for our resolution forms, our offers, installment agreements, uncollectible powers of attorney, all of that. Our sponsors have special offers for you. If you want to check them out, go to taxrepllc.com, resources, and TRN podcast page to view the sponsor offers. Enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. I'm Eric Green. Joining me is Marcelino Dodge. If you don't know Marcelino, he is the president of Cash Tracks Financial, a firm that provides personalized professional tax, insurance, and investment services to individuals and businesses. He's also the voice of the Tax Answers Advisor podcast, where he provides insights and planning tips to his listeners. I am a follower of his. I've been on his podcast. And Marcelino, thanks for taking the time and coming and joining me on my podcast. What we're going to do today, this is a topic that's and you probably have already gathered this. It's sort of a hot button issue for me. And in the sense that so many taxpayers don't know how to, and I'm going to say use, but that's probably not the right word. You know what? Better. Don't know how to work with their tax professional. If you ask them, what we get a lot of is, well, yeah, I go see him or I go see her in March. Well, that's you're missing the boat. All right. So there's a lot here that I'm fired up about this. We can unpack. If you don't mind starting off, if someone's going to pick a tax professional, what are some of the qualifications that they should be looking for?
Well, when one goes to look for a tax professional, it's kind of sad in the sense that you can open up the phone book or you can do a search online and you can find all kinds of people who profess to do taxes.
Right.
But yet and there's even people that, your neighbors will say, I can do your taxes too, or this kind of stuff. But what I'll admit, because I am partial here, is that I really feel that ones need to look for an enrolled agent, which is really an underutilized and even, what's the word I'm looking for here? One who is not well known still in this day and age. I say I've been an enrolled agent since 2006, and I still get, what is that?
Right.
From people. And then I go through we're licensed by the IRS to do tax, and I go through the whole spiel about what an enrolled agent is. But yet that's one of who I really think one should look for. Now, more often, and for good reason, CPAs are often recognized as well. But what most people don't realize is that not all CPAs, they do great work and they're wonderful people in whole, but not all CPAs really specialize in tax.
Do tax. A lot of them do financial audit and other types of financial, analysis. And the thing, you've mentioned this, the EAs do have a sort of a PR issue. All right. And they know about it. I mean, the NAEA is known for a long time that EAs, it's not recognized the way it should be. What about the folks that are only seasonal? All right. Because one of the hot button issues I have is you need to be working with your tax professional. Now, I don't know if you remember this. I'm old enough that I remember this, where there were tax people who would work for 3 months a year and they take the summer off. To me, I mean, and I don't do taxes. Tax season never seems to end anymore, right? It just seems to be going like it's just going year round. Do you think that there's something to be said for making sure you have someone who's around, who's available year round?
I really think there is something said to that, because even where I work, there's a lot of professionals who are available year round, but there's some offices that literally like almost completely closed. I mean, they're available like maybe half a day, 3 days a week, and some that are maybe available 1 day a week during the off season because they're, I don't know, off doing other things perhaps.
Right.
I don't really know what they do, but yet having some available year round to me anymore today with this ever changing environment that we are in, it is just absolutely vital to have that resource. So yeah, in my opinion, a person, as they go look for someone or they want someone to do their taxes, they really need someone who will be available year round, is even available year round, which to me is where some CPAs and even some enrolled agents are guilty of this, of being seasonal in thought.
Well, I almost think it goes further than that.
Mhm.
If it's me, I want somebody who's at the top of their game.
Mhm.
And I don't think you get to the top of your game if you're out doing roofing the rest of the year and you only come in during, to work for H&R Block or one of the chains or whatever for like 8 weeks a year or 10 weeks a year. I mean, my thing is obviously representation, but I've got my members marketing all the time. We do training all the time.
Mhm.
All I know is this: if it's my money on the line, I want somebody who does nothing but this. I want someone
Mhm.
who is watching what is going on, what are the trends, what is happening with Congress, are there opportunities for planning? That's
Mhm.
the value, and that's where so many people fall down. I mean, uh, you
Mhm.
know. I'm sure you've heard this. People will say to me, well, does it really matter? All they're doing is putting stuff in a software package, right? They just sit and put numbers in the program. Uh,
Oh boy.
I can do that myself. I can go to Staples back when you bought a disc. You now
Yeah.
download everything, but I can do this for $39,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
The DIYers. I'm going to ask you your thoughts on this, but I think I already know what they are.
Well, the do-it-yourselfers I've talked about on my podcast, they're really taking chances, because I do know from my experience and even using my own professional tax software that the software just puts it in wherever the software thinks it goes.
Right.
Now the calculations, they're great on that. They do great on calculations, but when it comes to placement, sometimes software will make it, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer. What'll happen is that it asks you a series of questions, and depending on that, how you answer that series of questions is where it puts stuff. Now, I've been to seminars because I'm constantly training. I do seminars myself constantly
Yep.
throughout the year. I'm only supposed to do 24 hours of continuing education, but I'm probably over 50 every year,
Yeah, me
just in
too.
trying to keep up with stuff. And a number of the presentations I've been to, and some of it's been from some tax attorneys as well, who represent people, and other education opportunities I get, is they say, you cannot trust your software. You have to understand the law. And so that's where, to me, with the do-it-yourselfers, they're being instructed, well, you can trust the software to do it for you. Well, I beg to differ, because you've encountered this and I've encountered this, is the fact that many people come in a year later, and they did it the year before with with some do-it-yourself software. And I look at it and I go, uh, this is in the wrong place. This is not deducted correctly. And we end up having to amend that return, and they end up having to pay back some stuff because I will just say, over deducted stuff, because they trusted in the software.
I have a
Well,
client that had three small Schedule Cs
mm-hmm,
and went through the interview with one of the do-it-yourself software packages, and every business, it said, do you drive and what do you do for miles? So he kept
mm-hmm.
putting in 25,000 miles for each one.
Oh my
It ends
goodness.
up deducting, taking the deduction for 75,000 miles,
Oh,
and was
whoa.
shocked when he got picked for an audit. Now, yes, I could explain to the auditor the mistake, and she got it. Um, but yeah, 20% accuracy penalty on that hurt.
Mm-hmm.
That really hurt. No, I think, well, listen, in the legal arena, or in the representation arena, one of the software companies in my space, who I won't name, was out at conferences, and their salespeople said, "You don't have to know what you're doing with an offer. The software does it for you." Yeah, no, the bad idea. But in the legal world, we have it with estate planning. No, we've developed our own software, but there are software packages. You need to review that. I don't know what they put in there. I don't know what state they're in. I mean, you need to have some expertise. I mean, look at hobby loss issues. You just do the software. They're not going to flag that. And I'm talking about the 183 and the 9 factors and all the other things that you would talk to. Your pro would sit there and say, well, wait a minute. We got year after year of losses here. Have you considered, is this a hobby? Is it a business? Let's talk about these 9 factors, whatever it is.
Yes, definitely there. And back on the mileage issue that you mentioned there, one of the things that a do-it-yourself software will not ask for is your mileage log.
Right.
And I am that's one of my big pet peeves with people is, did you do a mileage log? And they'll always give me that blank stare, or they'll give me something. I'm constantly harping on even the clients I've worked with for years. I'm always harping on them about a mileage log. And I've even, there's an app. I've been trying to encourage them to use apps and stuff to track their mileage. And the example you mentioned, I can understand why he'd got audited. That'd have been an audit flag like right now.
Oh, 75,000 miles a year. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's just like waving the red flag, audit me. So anyway, and the hobby loss issues, like you mentioned there, different individuals, the presumption of profit that you got to have, you're at least trying, if you do it 3 out of 5 years and so on. Yeah. People are trying to deduct hobbies still.
Yep.
And it doesn't work. And it's interesting that loss is that, of course, the expenses were a itemized deduction subject to the 2% limitation, but that's even suspended till 2025. So we got to get people off of that. And actually, I don't have too much problems with that in my practice as far as hobby stuff, other than I do occasionally run into the hobby farm. I will describe it. They're not really trying to make a profit, but that's a big thing that happens out with some people. Well, I'm going to have a few cows and stuff.
Yeah, no.
So,
the hobby loss, so often it can be addressed if they know to address it. So for instance, if I'm usually the last person in line, by the time they get to me, we got problems, right? But if they get to you and you can say, well, wait a minute, do you have a business plan? Okay, well, you need to let's get a written business plan. There are templates you can do online. Do you have separate accounts? In other words, the pro can walk them through these issues so that if they do get audited later saying, hey, you got all these losses. Well, first of all, back out the depreciation. And I did that once, and clearly making a profit, complete swing up, and we wanted appeals. But there are things that the tax pro can help with. The software just, doesn't do. On another note, what we're also seeing a lot of is we're coming out of the pandemic. Are people starting businesses? Right?
Oh,
maybe they lost their job, but there is or they recognize an opportunity. I did a podcast and I did a blog entry probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, about entrepreneurs and some of the biggest mistakes they made. But my point, and again, I'll ask you your opinion on it. My point is, get your tax pro in before you start doing things, because
exactly
deductions, amortizing, I mean, it gets very complicated when you're starting.
Well, one of my first podcasts back in October of last year had to do with the fact you're starting a business. Are you planning for success or failure? And basically what that I talked about in that whole podcast is, who are you talking to when you go to talk to your business? Because everybody will go talk to their attorney. Everybody will go talk to their banker, but neither your attorney nor your banker will actually say, go talk to your tax person.
Right.
But that's who you actually need to go talk to first, is your tax person, which is why it's important. Another reason why it's important, as we talked about earlier, why it's important to have someone who you can speak to year around about
Right.
such items, because there are so many areas that come in when you're looking to start a business that a banker or an attorney, I mean, there's the legal stuff. Yes, you got to take care of that stuff, of course. But the tax stuff is to me the most important part of it, because so many times I've seen people start businesses and I find out after the beginning of the year, oh, you started the business? Oh, yeah. And then they give me the whole story and everything. And it's like, oh, then I come back and say, oh, by the way, you owe $10,000 in taxes. And they'll look back at me and go, what?
And by the way, welcome to something called self-employment tax.
Yeah.
All right. And all of a sudden they're like, what the hell is that? No, but let's run with that, because,
Mhm.
and it dovetails into one of my hot buttons, which is, well, I'll go see my accountant in March. All right. The time that in my opinion, and you can give me your take, the time that you can help people is before year end. All right.
Mhm.
So at a minimum, they should meet with you in November, right? I'd say October, except that we got the 15th deadline, but November. And where are we to date? Are there some moves that I can make
Mhm.
to save taxes? What is my bill looking for? Do I
Mhm.
need to get more expenses, or should I defer it really to next year? I mean, you can't.
Mhm.
I mean, I tell people, your accountant, if you go and see them in March of next year, it's a
Mhm.
postmortem. That's all they're doing, is a postmortem. The time to do it is at least in November, but quite honestly, my
Mhm.
argument would be quarterly.
Mhm.
Where are we?
At
First
least.
of all, if your quarterly taxes, but aside from that, where are we? Where are we headed? And
Mhm.
I don't know. You see a lot of businesses. You've done this for a long time, like I have. Maybe you'll have some good ideas for them. You've seen things, right?
Mhm.
And they're that's the interesting thing, is entrepreneurs think they're going on and they're going to blaze the
Mhm.
trail by themselves. You don't have
Mhm.
to. There are people that will help you.
Mhm. Well, part of the problem too is the do-it-yourself accounting systems, because so many times they'll go in and they'll set that up with no clue of actually how to set it up. They'll
Right.
walk right through it. Supposedly they'll walk through it. And then I get back and I get these balance sheets or profit and losses that are
Make no
all
sense.
messed up, make
Right.
no sense. And so that's where, for just a little bit of an investment, instead of just saying, I got to do things as cheaply as possible, for a little bit of investment, you don't even need your tax person. At least we may talk about this later, but you don't even really need your tax person to do your accounting. But I would say you need your tax person to help you set up your accounting system. That way, you know exactly where you are and you know where to put that payment you're making on that loan that is not a business expense that you're putting on your profit and loss, because you don't know where else to put that payment that you're making, which is what I see so much of anyway. Or you get a loan and you add it to your income and it's not and it goes somewhere else. So
Right.
that's another big area, is that you're starting it. A person really needs to have that tax person involved in that setup, and then even train you to a certain extent, which is what I would love to do, is just help people to do that. And then I can come in and help them to manage it through the year and let them do that little bit of work there. Because many people can handle it. They just need to be shown how within their accounting system, and then just get me the statements and I can just look at them every month or quarter, whatever agreement we have in place, and then just make sure they're on track.
Right. And to give people, the listeners, a sense, if you're a CPA or EA listening to this, well, yeah, okay, I can't imagine that they're disagreeing with us. But for those people who are just listening, to give you a sense, here at the firm, we have a controller, we have an outside CPA firm, and we have an outside bookkeeping. The checks are IOLTA and all of that. I personally have my own outside bookkeeper, and that for my personal, because I am so busy all the time. My own bookkeeping wasn't getting done. My own record keeping wasn't being kept up to date. I'm losing charitable deductions. I'm losing deductible thing. I mean, all of that, worth their weight. I got news for you. The bookkeeper's worth her weight and my weight in gold. All right. No, absolutely.
Mhm.
It is necessary, but even just practically, if you can explain, and if you're listening to this, if you can explain to the entrepreneurs, how do you make decisions if you don't have good numbers? You're
Mhm.
just guessing, all right? And that is,
I have money in the account. I'm good.
you know,
That's
that succeeding is hard enough with the right information. You're shooting blind
mhm.
without it. Um, and this is going to dovetail into it. This is why I think it's so important to have the ongoing contact. And if you do have a bookkeeper, Marcelino, they could send you the books and you could take a look at it and get on a phone call or even an email. Say, look,
Mhm.
things are good. Here's what I'm noticing. Let's see where things are in 3 months, and then we got to start doing some year end planning.
Mhm.
Um, and so when people say, well, the rich have all these loopholes, no, they just have either educated themselves
Mhm.
or have people who are educated in this to handle this. So they know every opportunity. Finding a 401k, I mean,
Mhm.
basically you can buy life insurance through the
Mhm.
business and have it as key man, or as long as you cover a certain amount for employees. That's where all of they're not games, the opportunities are.
Mhm.
But if you're going to try to DIY, unless you want to do a lot of reading on nights and weekends and get yourself educated, your time's better spent working on like me. My time is better spent working on my firm and tax rep. Let the bookkeeper do the bookkeeping. Let my controller be the controller. It's not an efficient. First of all, I'm not going to be good at it, despite being an accountant and a lawyer. I'm not going to be good at it. It's not my thing. And
Mhm.
my time is better spent doing something else, like
Mhm.
most entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge people have. That, well, I want to educate, I want to learn it myself, I want to do it all. It's like, well, that's great, but do you realize how many years it's taken me as a tax professional just to get what I'm trying to offer you and what I'm trying to do for you? How much reading and studying and practice and years and stuff. It just to be able to help some of these businesses the way that I'm doing it has taken a long time. And you got a nice entrepreneur on the street there that's trying to start off and do it. Hey, that's great, but you could very easily be missing stuff, or as I've said before, just putting stuff in the wrong place in your accounting system because you don't actually understand accounting, because you got to be able to wrap your head around that. And you may not be that type of person. You may be good at whatever you're doing, and you could
Right.
be very excellent at it, but then this come back to this numbers thing, and you could be wrapping numbers around and mixing up your bank interest with your other interest, and it's just all over the place. And it just is not a pretty sight at the end of the year, because liabilities, especially tax liabilities, as I try to work with people and say, this is what you should be doing, but yet they still won't do it. It's just that part just still amazes me. I don't know if it's something I'm doing wrong or they're just laziness. Really don't know. It's just out there. So
I actually I have a theory on this. I honestly believe that most people, because of that theory of you're putting numbers in software, right?
mhm,
I see, I can go to Staples and they've got TurboTax and Tax Cut and whatever all of them are.
yes.
I think that there's a sense that there's no value to it. They
Mhm,
don't put value to, and they don't want to spend the money. All right.
mhm,
And if you are listening to this, that is the dumbest thing you could do. Trust me, you don't need to spend money on us if you have a good EA or CPA doing your work. If
mhm.
they will be worth their weight in gold. And on the flip side, a bad preparer can cause I had a call this morning on a
Mhm.
potential criminal case. The outside accountant, in attempting to help them, made up a whole bunch of stuff that
Oh,
our client, who's now under audit, is now discovering. And I hate to do this, but I think we're going to be throwing Mr. CPA under the bus. Um, but
that, yeah.
it's a bad. You're 75% civil fraud penalty, right? The adjustments on 3 years, and if they can point civil fraud, 6 years. It's a nightmare.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and I do think, and I want to come back to this. I do think it is why you do need to be involved in the accounting, not necessarily doing the accounting, but at least in the setup and the
Mhm.
review of it.
Yes, that would be absolutely essential, at least from my standpoint, is that's what I try to do with with all of my clients, and one I just converted over at the beginning of the year, I try to work with them because I have within the system I have I call it a basic chart of accounts that I worked in Blint with every client. And so I told them, okay, we're going to start your new business. Great. This is what you're going to do. You want to use QuickBooks or whatever, that's fine. But I'm going to set up your chart of accounts in your QuickBooks.
Right.
And so in their case, some people still like using desktop or laptop versions. That's fine. So they brought their laptop in. I sat there and put in my chart of accounts and everything that we're going to do. I says, okay, this is what you're going to use. Because what they had before wasn't so bad. It's actually pretty good for surprisingly, but we were starting a new business and says, okay, this is what you're going to do. We got it all set up. We're still in year one, so I haven't seen how it's completely gone yet, but so far it's been going pretty good. And then they'll bring in their laptop and we'll make changes from time to time. And for those that maybe use an online version, we'll go in and we'll make adjustments as well. But my goal is to have everybody on a very similar chart of accounts that I'm working with. That way, as they put in their information, they know where everything is. I know where everything is, and we can adjust throughout the year. So, but they're doing all their own accounting work. Essentially, I'm just reviewing.
Right. And the other thing that they need to understand is they're saving money at the end. So yes, you'd say, well, I'm spending money now. I'm meeting quarterly. Is it worth it? Yes, you will save money on taxes and you will save all the time at the end of the year. So Marcelino doesn't have to spend hours and hours billing you at his rate to fix all of the bullshit that got done for the 12 months. I mean, I know because I hear it. We have a sales tax audit. My controller literally, and she's quiet. I literally heard her go, "Oh my God," when she went into the QuickBooks, and she told me it's nonsensical. It's nonsensical. She understands why the sales tax auditor can't. What they did is they just took the deposits in the bank account and charged. They couldn't come up with any other number because the bookkeeping was so horrible. And so she asked the client, well, what did you, he said, I would print it out and I took it to H&R Block, the P&L, and they would do the return. And so no one is looking. And that's the other thing, by the way, there are a lot of people that think, well, I go to one of the branches of one of those national chains and I have an accountant. They're not your accountant. That is the case where they're just taking your stuff and putting it in the software. I'm going to go back to what Marcelino, how you open this up for those listening. You want to have a dedicated EA or CPA who does taxes, at least, looking at your stuff, and you got to give them time to look at it and provide feedback. You can't do that in March in the middle of tax season. It's got to be done, June, November, times when you can sit and really get feedback. And I'm telling you, that money will come back to you many times over.
And you're less likely probably to be audited because when you're putting stuff in the correct place and correct doing it, the red flags for auditing go up. Granted, we don't know them all, of course, but over the years, you just come to learn, at least I've come to learn, that there are certain notation, certain things you can put in that usually doesn't get questioned or is usually okay over the long term. Whereas if you put on a do-it-yourself one, I just happen to have come in the last couple of weeks, they actually have on their miscellaneous deductions like some type of service truck that they had purchased that year and completely deducting off that truck instead of having it where it should be on depreciation. And that's something you can do on do it yourself. And I looked at that and I flat out told the person, I'm surprised you haven't been audited. If you've been doing this with every vehicle you have, I'm surprised you haven't been. And that he has close to and it's a sole proprietorship, which last figures I saw actually had higher audit rates than corporations did. So I'm real careful on all of my sole proprietorships for that very reason, because I know they have a higher chance. And I think we had mentioned before that the number of audits may be increasing. Is that true?
Well, certainly non-filers. But if you think about it, if you're remotely successful, I'd rather be a small S Corp or C Corp in that pond than a big Schedule C, which are the most heavily audited anyway. No, I think certainly A is you would spot red flags, but more than that, sometimes it is what it is. And if they do get picked for an audit, they're ready to handle it
Mm-hmm.
versus the
Yes.
mess that you often get. One question I get actually interesting is when I go on and I get on this soapbox, is somebody will say, well, are they going to help me make money? Right? The EA or CPA. Now, on the surface, that's sort of a stupid question. Like they're not going to start selling for you, but honestly, I think the
Mm-hmm.
answer is yes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, at least that's my sense, right? If I can give you accurate numbers, if I can make sure that you know the accounting and the tax stuff is taken
Mm-hmm.
care of, entrepreneur, go do what you do best, or artist, or landscaper, or whatever. You go do what you do best, and we got this covered.
Mm-hmm. Yes, go do what you do. Focus on what you're doing. That way you can actually bring in more flows, which then you take a look at what we charge on an hourly basis, and then look at what they perhaps collect on an hourly basis, which actually in many of these cases, at least from what I've seen, they can actually make in the few hours that we take to do something and they pay us for whatever our payment agreement is, they'll make 20 times that by focusing on their business. So they can more than make up because they're not sitting at home late at night, typing in numbers, trying to figure this other stuff out. And that's just like gross coming in. But then you take in, well, let's look at the possibility. Maybe now you can contribute to, if you're a sole proprietor, a lot of times I'll say, why don't we look at doing a simple IRA plan for you to help you out there? And maybe contributions if you have employees, or if you're an S Corp or C Corp. Let's look at some other options as well. You can contribute and make those contributions and you come off your W-2 and so on. So and then that's going to save you, and that's going to help you in the tax realm as well.
Right. Well, that, and also one of the things as an entrepreneur, we all go out and we're hoping we're going to hit it out of the park. What about the idea of bank financing? Having your numbers put together in a way that banks can follow it, that you can actually get a loan. You have a business plan that makes sense. You have projections that make sense. It's I think we keep coming back to, and again, we're probably beating a dead horse with this crowd who listens to me, which is mostly accountants. But you know what, and I was going to say, I do have a last question, which I really do want to talk, aim to the audience. But before we get there, Marcelino, for those folks who are listening who do want to get a hold of you, how best to find you?
They can very easily find me. Of course, my email is success@cashtracksfinancial.com. You can give me a call directly. It's 844-394-4287. Then, of course, you can look me up on the voiceamerica.com business channel under the Tax Answers Advisor. I can be very, very easily found, or actually you can type in Marcelino Dodge just in any search and you can probably find me. So
yeah, no, I always ask this question, and when you Google you, there'll be no problem finding you. Okay, I mean you've
done the search, huh?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, listen, I mean normally what I do, but before I decide to bring somebody on, it has to be somebody I think that can add something to a particular topic or a particular issue or something like that. And I do listen to your podcast. And so researching you was actually a lot of fun. And I got to listen to a bunch of your podcasts and all the other things. But no, I did note that finding you is not that difficult. So yeah, no, I don't think anyone will have a problem. I will, however, put some links in the description below if you do want to get a hold of Marcelino. So here's my last question, Marcelino. So for the folks listening to this, the EAs and CPAs listening to this, and they're like, you know what? Okay, this all makes sense. And I will say, and I've said it before in the podcast, we train our clients. And so our clients don't take our lead. So in other words, when one of my tax rep members will email me and say, my practice is out of control. I'm getting clients texting me on the weekends, whatever. You set that up. You created that expectation. All right. So for instance, if you're listening, you can't see this, but if you were here with us, I have my work cell
Mhm.
and I have my personal cell. When I leave here, my work cell gets turned off at 5 p.m. I'm done. Unless I have calls to make that evening, and sometimes I
Mhm.
do, which I make from there, because I was one of those out of control people. I was my day started out of control. I turned my phone off before I got out of bed, and I already have text messages from clients, emails, whatever. So now, if you think about it, I'm an out of control person. I'm completely in a state of reaction.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I had heard Ed Milet, who has his own podcast, the World Financial Group, he's very successful. He talked about when he was out of control starting on his journey, he did things that would help him grab control of his morning and grab control of his evening. And
Mhm.
one of the things what he said is he does not turn his phone on for 30 minutes. I
Hmm.
assume he means his business phone.
Mhm.
Um, and I have found that I can go home and be present. So to bring this back to my question for you, for people listening to this, say, look, Eric, this sounds great. How do I get my clients to come in November? How do I force them to do that? How do I? Um, you're going to train them. So right now, we just wrapped up this tax season.
Mhm.
And I know most of you are like, oh, good, I'm done with those people. Now I got these other people on extension. No, 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 no. Now it's the time to email them and say, where are you in 2021? Let's do some planning before the fall. Let's see where you are. Now, not everyone's going to want to come in, and not
Mhm.
everyone's going to want to pay for it. But what my thought is, we have to train them. You've done this well. I'm going to say you've done this really well. I'm sure you've got your headache clients too. What advice do you have for people that do have out of control practices?
Well, one area as far as out of control, like you mentioned, is steps that I took is that my phone system has a time on and time off on it as well, so that if people call the business after a certain time, it basically jumps right to voicemail. It's just automatic within my system. It's something I put into place. It's been about a year or so ago, at least. I've done it so that I don't get business calls after a certain time, even though I got the business app to be able to use my cell phone for it. It still don't ring because of the schedule that I have set. So I've taken control of that, but yet I can still call out from the business line if I
If you
need
have to,
to, if I have
so
to.
clients don't have your cell phone number.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
Exactly. Because I don't print that out there. So one of the things that came that with this that really I think is important for us as tax professionals is to change our thinking. That's where I think it starts. Change our own thinking to be not just a seasonal, but look at being more in the advisory kind of role, not just a tax professional that's working 3.5 months out of the year, but look on being a more advisory role, because just the way this world is going in the tax, at least the way that I feel, the way we see it's going, is that you really need to be more in the tax advisory, tax consultant kind of way, because these do it yourself methods are just going to keep growing. And so we got to make ourselves stand out, especially with the generation of those who use tax professionals for a long time moving on. And then the millennials and so on coming up who may be more inclined to try to do it yourself. You got to make yourself as a professional stand out, because you basically got clients that are moving on, or I'll just say passing away. They're just that we're more reliant upon you. And you got a younger crowd coming in who may not be as inclined to use a tax professional, but in this time probably even need them more so.
Right.
But just do so. We got to get our thinking changed. We got to work on our communication and use various items. I mean, I see it around in my area where there's not a lot of tax professionals in my area are utilizing all the communication methods that are out there. I mean, they got a basic website. Some still just don't even utilize social media really at all, or at least having a media page, which I've had for well since 2009. I've had my pages and stuff set up. So we got basically, it's in a lot of ways as tax professionals, we got to modernize and make ourselves available.
I would almost pitch it a different way.
Mm.
You need to elevate
Mm.
yourself, and this gets back to the whole, being an expert and adding value. Those tax preparers that do returns and they vanish, they're off doing roofing or whatever they're doing the rest of the year. That's one level. If you and I've had I don't know if you know Michelle Weinstein from the Abundant Accountant. I've had her on. Amy Vetter has been on a couple of times, and they do coaching. And what you'll hear from them is you can position yourself to get more money, to do higher end things, and the way that you do that is to make yourself more valuable. And that's something, that's why I don't think it can be seasonal. If you're going to do this, I want the pro who does nothing but this. And if you're a pro listening to this, here's what I'm going to suggest. You will get out of it what you put into it. Meaning you will attract to yourself what you think you're worth. And the way that, so how do you, Marcelino, how do I get myself to feel that I'm worth $500 an hour, that I should be getting $5,000 to $10,000 per client doing their planning and their tax work and their, getting involved in helping them with insurance and estate and everything else I'm doing? You make yourself an expert and position yourself that way. No one's going to walk in one day and say, I got magic pixie dust. Would you like to be a high-end, financial consultant? You make that happen, right?
We got to make that happen. And some of it's just by, at least for me and from what I've seen, some of it is at least at a certain level, providing some customer service. It starts with that, making your clients feel like they're being served. Because that's one of the biggest issues that I get when someone comes to see me, is that they'll say, well, when I went to so-and-so, they never told me this, or they never told me that, or they never suggested this. I mean, a whole list of stuff. So customer service and helping ones, letting them know, first of all, positioning yourself as a communicator so that they know you're personable. Be personable. If you get a phone call from someone, don't put it off. I mean, return it at least within 24 hours, get your going there. And then even take the step of getting some type of monthly a service plan that you can develop. Like a model I've been going to is more of an annual kind of plan where I'm getting area where tax preparation is just a part of what I do. I present it to the clients and saying, this is what we can do throughout the year. Tax services are going to be a part of what I do for you, but yet throughout the year, you joined into my monthly program here. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to help you plan. I'm going to help you to establish goals. I'm going to learn what's important to you, understand what pains you have. Let's see what steps we can take to eliminate those pains for you, help you to reach these goals, help you to develop a certain strategy so you can reach those goals. And a part of that, as we go through the year, is going to be getting your taxes done as well, but taking a very broad approach so that we're not just helping you tax-wise, but we're helping you with a whole plan throughout the year so that you are able to be successful and then focus on whatever you're going to do. And this could be for your small business person, your Schedule C person. And if someone wants that extra help, it can even be someone who just doesn't necessarily have their own business, but just wants some extra help throughout the year. So it can just vary from your just regular W-2 client who wants extra help to your client who has the $1 million or more business, your S Corp or C Corp, who's just looking, who would like that extra help. And maybe just you hadn't thought about offering it, but something that as well, which is why I've been transitioning this way, is to level out your income throughout the year.
Right.
By getting a nice program going where you're just getting a good cash flow throughout the year.
Monthly income is nice, but and here's what's going to happen. I think for folks listening to this, you roll this out, you'll get a handful of people. And as new clients come in, this is the deal. And they sign up. And what's going to happen is you will eventually go to a handful of clients that say, look, either get with the program or you got to go find somebody else. And that is how you will work your way up and get your practice. The truth is, you want to do, I don't know about you, I want to do what I want to do. I want to work with the clients I want to work with. I want to do the things I want to do. And I've reached a point where I don't want to do what I don't want to do. I'm not going to do what I don't want to do anymore. I pass on cases. I pass on cases all the time. They're too small. It's too much of a mess. I can tell right out of the gate this client is going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You make they always tell lawyers you will make more money on the clients you don't take. I bet it's the same for accountants. There are clients that are going to be such pains in the neck
Mm-hmm.
that you're losing money dealing with them. The stress and the agita. You start training your clients, start transitioning your clients to where you need them to be, and
Yes.
watch how much it doesn't take much, and all of a sudden you will have a whole new practice.
Definitely there, because the hardest thing, at least for me to come to realize as I was going through this process, is that there are some clients that you're just going to need to fire simply, which was several years ago. I was like, what, fire a client? It was like a new concept.
Counterintuitive.
Yeah. It's like, but yeah, technically, and it leads back to the thing that, let me see here. What was that old adage? Like 80%. Anyway, 20% of your clients cause 80% of your problems.
Right.
That's what I was trying to think of. And I've really understood that over the years. So it's been an ongoing process for me of weeding people out. And some of it has just been a matter of asking certain questions that they didn't want to answer. And then you'll learn exactly, okay, well, I didn't want to do business with them anyway. And so I've gone, actually, my practice as far as numbers of clients I serve has shrunk.
You know what though? But I bet the bottom line has gone up.
But the bottom line has gone up. That's one thing I was looking at. I was looking at how many clients was I doing like 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I was looking how much I was making then. And I look at how many clients, and I was just looking at, I've actually done fewer returns this year than I did last year.
Yep.
Already. Even with my extensions, I'm still down. But anyway, but the bottom line is still it's staying pretty close to about where it is. And sometimes, in some years, many years, it was higher. It's just right now we're still in the COVID adjustment because of stuff, but still it's interesting how your per client average, how mine anyway has been increasing.
No, and that's because, I mean, you don't want to be cheaper than those national chains.
No.
You should be more expensive. You're better, you know. And I forget. Somebody asked me this once. A client called and said, you know, what is your rate? I gave them my rate, and they actually said, well, so and so is only someone in New York. I have no idea. Someone is only this much money. I'm like, well, I'm better than they are. And the person said, really? And I'm like, I don't know. But I mean, you know, listen, I know people are more expensive than me. That's my rate. And, you know,
yes.
You know, I can live with it if you go somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I actually had people say, well, I stopped going to you because you charge too much. I'm like, well, okay, that's what you feel, but it's like at least for me, it's the old adage, you get what you pay for. Exactly. If you're going to go cheap, you're going to get cheap. And I'll tell you what, I've seen some of these cheap returns and how people have been, I will just say, ripped off and overpaid and stuff put in the wrong place. And ironically, that sometimes they don't come back, even though I did fix them. They still decide to go do something different in another year because they still like being cheap, I guess, and doing it wrong.
They don't understand. You get what you pay for. And when the one that called this morning had an accountant for a long time, and I bet the accountant would tell him how much money he saved him because he's cheap, and he's going to cost him a pretty penny on this audit. No, absolutely. So, listen, Marcelino, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
We got to do it again, right after the extensions all get done. Thanks for joining me. And listen, everyone, I'll put the links below. You can definitely go check out Marcelino. His content is great. Go check out the Tax Answers Advisor podcast. Again, great content. And, Marcelino, like I said, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you. And you're listening to my griping on the soapbox. I knew you'd agree with me. That's why I had you on. I didn't want someone who's going to fight with me. But no, I think I think it really is important for people to know how to actually properly work with their preparer. And like I said, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Eric. It's been wonderful.
All right. And everyone, listen, thanks for listening to this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye. If you haven't already subscribed to the Tax Rep Network podcast, Go to taxrepllc.com, mouse over resources, and click TRN podcast. You'll get an account loaded with all the episodes, our sponsor offers, and transcripts of recent podcast episodes. Thanks for listening, and thanks again to our sponsors, Call ENQ and Tax Help Software. See you on the next episode.